okay, so Congress has started having these MKUltra hearings, which is fantastic progress. I was a little worried that they were going to be like tepid, kind of half disclosure, limited hangouts, but it looks like they're actually going pretty hard into things about these drugging experiments that happened and the connection to the Manson family and all of these kinds of things, which is great to see. It's still just barely scratching the surface, and there's a lot more depth to this rabbit hole. But I think it needs to happen at this certain pace for the public to be able to digest it. Now, other people have done fantastic work in tracking all of the details of this, and I have done a lot of research on this myself, but I don't want to speak about that right now. What I want to talk about, and the reason I'm making this video, is to go into a personal story about some of the spiritual dimensions of this that illustrates how everything is interconnected and also how each one of us is an integral part of this grand drama that's unfolding on planet Earth, no matter how small you might think you are. Everyone is playing an important role in this whole tapestry that's unfolding. So bear with me as I tell this story. So in 2010, I watched Rosemary's Baby, which is a horror movie directed by Roman Polanski, and I was with my girlfriend at the time, and she wanted to watch the movie, and then she fell asleep right away, and so then I'm stuck watching the movie by myself. I didn't even watch the whole thing, and if you've seen it, it's this story about this woman who lives in an apartment building, and it's this sort of vague implication that the people in the apartment building are doing this like satanic ritual on her at night, but it's kind of like, is she having a nightmare about it? Is it really happening? And then she gets pregnant, and then it's like this demonic baby that's coming out of her, Rosemary's Baby. I didn't even watch the whole thing. I got to the first scene where there's this like demon rubbing its hands all over her, and I was like, I can't watch this. We're gonna go to sleep. And so we come up to go to sleep, and we lie down, actually in my bed right there. I'm in my bedroom right now. And I start having this dream, and it's I drop into a hyper vivid dream, and I'm not a person who has dreams that are of real places. It's always like my house, but it looks different. But this was a hyper vivid, exactly the same perfect replica of my room. And it's like the moment right before we're getting ready for bed, and I'm standing on the floor right here and taking my clothes off, and it was hot in the summer, and there's a fan running, and I suddenly realized, I'm like, whoa, the fan sounds too loud. Why is the fan so loud? And then as soon as I have that thought, I realize that I'm dreaming. And then I teleport, and I'm lying in the bed, and I'm completely paralyzed. And it feels like there's a sword stabbing into the top of my neck and stabbing down into my spine. It's like this excruciatingly painful, physically painful experience. And there's this feeling like there's a demon like inside my body. And I'm frozen, I can't move. I'm like gripped like this, and I'm trying to move, and I think that if I can touch my girlfriend in the bed next to me, or like make a sound or something, then she'll wake me up and I'll break out of it. And I like summon all of my willpower, and I'm going, and I grab next to me, and and it's just empty sheets, and I'm just in the bed by myself, and I'm still dreaming. And then I teleport again, and I'm standing, and now I'm fine, but what was just happening to me is happening to my girlfriend in front of me, and she's lying on the floor, and her eyes are rolling into the back of her head, and she's like having a seizure, and I'm trying to hold her up, and I'm screaming, and then the dream just like slowly fades out. And I'm like, what the fuck? And one, I never watched a horror movie again after having that dream, and it was such a deep illustration to me of the power of imagery and of stories to send energy and send things like across the ether that can penetrate your body really, really deeply. And I knew at that point that Roman Polanski, his wife, Sharon Tate, was murdered by Charles Manson. And it struck me like, holy shit, like the energy from the Manson family murders went into Roman Polanski, and then he put the energy into the movie, and then it came out of the movie into my body, and then I had this experience. It was like, whoa, okay, there's this huge power to movies and imagery and all of these things. So then years later, I started learning about all of this Satanism, child sacrifice, sex trafficking, all of this Epstein file stuff that is coming out now around 2016. I started really diving into the rabbit holes about this. And I went really deep into the research, and it fucked me up really bad. Just learning about it. And I was in this interesting life circumstances where I had a lot of time to be doing this research, and I would go deep into it every day. And it just plunged me into this super dark space where for probably like a year, I was just in this dark pit. And then it took me maybe 5 years to get to the point where I could function like a normal human being again after that. So I don't really push this on people now. I've learned that it's like, okay, there's a digestion process, there's an acclimation process to learning about these really horrific things, and the body needs to be able to metabolize it. And so it's important that the truth gets told, and it's important that these things come out, but it's also important for it to go at a pace that the nervous system doesn't shut down from the overwhelm, from the trauma of just learning about it. But so as I'm learning about all of these things, and I think more of this will start to come out, read this book, The Franklin Cover-Up, and it follows this story about this scandal around a credit union in Omaha, Nebraska, that then opened up into this whole investigation into this child sex trafficking thing, these like satanic rituals, MKUltra mind control programs. And what we'll get to as a society in this MKUltra disclosure stuff is that at the bottom of it is, and maybe there's more depth, but what people have come forward, but there have been many whistleblower witness victims who have come forward and talked about this. Kathy O'Brien, Paul Bonacci, Bryce Taylor, there's been a handful of them, have come forward and said these very similar stories, that what the CIA really discovered during the MKUltra programs is that if an individual is traumatized really badly at a young age, and sexual trauma especially, then it splinters the personality and it splinters the psyche in such a way that people develop what used to be called multiple personality disorder, dissociative identity disorder. And that those alternate personalities can be programmed like a computer and have information put into them, have certain kinds of skills imprinted into them. The mind becomes really susceptible to imprinting when a person dissociates in this way, because they just go into this kind of like hypnotized state because their consciousness is disconnecting from the body in order to deal with the horrific trauma that's going on. They also realized that people who are part of incestuous abuse families, generational incestuous abuse families, where their parents sexually abused them, their parents were sexually abused by their parents, and so on, are especially susceptible to this. So the CIA started finding people who were getting caught making child pornography, who were part of these kind of incestuous abuse families, and then saying to them, okay, we'll not send you to prison, and we'll give you lots of money if you just give us your kids to use for these experiments, these mind control experiments we're doing. Kathy O'Brien was a part of this. Read her book at your own discretion. This is one of the things that is so important, and it really fucked me up to read it. Transformation of America is Kathy O'Brien's book. But in the Franklin cover-up, they show the depositions, the actual word-for-word depositions of Paul Bonacci, I don't know how to say his name, who was another kid who was in these similar programs. And Paul Bonacci grew up in Boys Town, Nebraska, which is this famous orphanage in Nebraska, which has now come out, and it's been discovered that there were all kinds of sexual abuse cases happening in this, where the older boys were raping the younger boys, the teachers were raping the kids, teachers, mentors, whatever they were. So Paul Bonacci was a part of this, and then he got abducted into these child prostitution, child pornography rings, and then was being used in this MKUltra program that he was going to then be this like asset for the CIA to do all kinds of stuff with. But something struck me as I was reading this, a little detail, and all these people say that everything was always filmed. All of their abuses, all the child pornography, all of the torture, everything is always filmed. And he said that he had this horrific satanic abuse experience filmed at the Bohemian Grove, and the person filming, somebody said their name was Hunter Thompson. And this struck me really suddenly when I read this, because Hunter S. Thompson, as we all know, made Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And I just so happened to have made a scene for a directing class while I was in film school of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And I remembered the dialogue because I had had these actors say it over and over again and written out the script of it, thinking it was just this kind of like silly, crazy, like drug hallucination at the time when I was making it. But it's this whole scene where Hunter is talking to his attorney, and the attorney is saying that he got this adrenochrome from a Satanist who was on trial for abusing children. And there's this whole like kind of crazy dialogue back and forth, and Hunter Thompson then takes the adrenochrome, and it's this like super wild scene in the movie. But so suddenly that pinged my awareness, and then I went back and watched the movie, and I was like, holy shit. Like, I think this movie is not just this drug-fueled hallucination, but it's actually Hunter S. Thompson's like veiled way of trying to show us things about what was really happening and the things that he was really involved in, but shown in this kind of like metaphorical, like symbolic almost kind of way. But so anyway, these pieces connected in my mind, and this like buzzing intuition started to happen in my body, and I felt like I needed to write something about this. And so I wrote this article about how all of these things interconnect with the Franklin cover-up and Paul Bonacci and adrenochrome and Hunter Thompson. And I made this Reddit post about it. And I think adrenochrome had been being talked about before that, and obviously it was in this movie. I'm sure people had mentioned it. But it was this moment where in these like circles of people discussing all of this, which was a very niche group of people back then, adrenochrome was not really on the radar. And then I made this post and it went super viral on Reddit. And then suddenly all of these people are talking about adrenochrome. And so I'm not sure if I like started the meme about it. And that is not important. I'm not like, I don't give a shit about taking credit, but it's like showing me how I played this role in this whole thing, and like seeing how, okay, Paul Bonacci was in Boys Town, and guess who else grew up in Boys Town? Charles Manson. And so the energy from all of that like wove into this experience and echoed through these people into this Rosemary's Baby experience, and then moved through my body such to the point that I was then it's like feeling the energy in this visceral, embodied, kind of somatic way to then have the impulse to write something about it and participate in this whole dialogue. So I guess the point I'm getting to with all of this is that no matter how small you think you are, if you think you're just a spectator in everything that's going on, you're not. You don't necessarily have to be the person who's getting millions of followers. You don't necessarily have to be a person who is involved in these programs, who's now coming out and being a whistleblower. You just have to follow the lines of your own life, follow the intuition, and have the courage to step forward into the power of what your life circumstances are calling for, because all of this stuff is playing out on a global stage, but the real arena of power is the mundane circumstances of your own life. It's the unfoldings in the interpersonal dynamics of the people you're connected to. That's what matters. And when we start to step into our power and have the courage to speak truth to people's gaslighting, to stand up to abuses, no matter how small, when they're happening in our own lives, that creates the vibrational energy that shifts everything in this reality, because we're all interconnected. And I feel that in this visceral way now because of these embodied experiences that I've had. So I hope that was helpful. Stay grounded as we're watching everything that's unfolding. It's so important to tend the body, take care of ourselves. After all of this stuff happened, now I've just had to double down into, I'm putting my feet on the grass every day. I'm tending plants. I'm taking care of my body. I'm working out. I'm eating really healthily, having loving connections with other people, and lots of things that bring me joy so that we can process and not get swallowed by the intensity and immensity of the darkness. And we'll all get through it together. I love you so much. More soon.